So
Hi,
Tania,
Jeff.
you're up.
Yep.
There we go.
Hi, Jeff. So I'd like to find out. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions, and you mentioned that there's a lot of opportunity in Africa as well. So Africa's always been very rich in its resources, in the finite resources such as copper, diamonds, gold, platinum. But the entrepreneurs of today, and from what I see in terms of Africa and just around the world, is they are much more younger generation, and with social media also all coming into play, they and impact means much more to them, and I think that's where the term purposepreneur comes in. So in terms of the entrepreneurs that we're looking at that's coming out of Africa, if you were an entrepreneur in Africa, what type of business would you potentially look at setting up, and how would you integrate technology into that, bearing in mind that we currently in Africa have issues. We mentioned earlier on that we have load shedding in South Africa at the moment, where our grid just, our government's entity that handles the electricity and manages that and distributes that. There's a challenge with that at the moment. And so we have load shedding where across the country, there's areas that's scheduled to have no electricity. And what business would you set up if you were in Africa? And how would you integrate technology into it?
So I think technology first in everything. So it's not integrate technology into it. It's where is technology going and forecasting the trends in each of those individual technologies. And where's the intersection of these technologies that creates economic value, that once I reach that tipping point, even if I forecast out that tipping point, that it's going to be somewhere in a couple of years, and I'm going to start before somebody else gets there. Once I've reached that tipping point, it gets better and better and better from there, either from the technology moving cheaper and cheaper or a network effect that I build into my design of the technology. And here's an example, and I think it's important. A lot of entrepreneurs start with something way too big so you want to be the biggest fish in the smallest pond. Mm-hmm. So if you said I'm going to go attack solar, you could say that as the big vision, but you want to start it in one area as a proof point, and what you're going to do to there and tell investors, after I do this well and prove this out, here's the trends, here's what I'm going to do to scale it across other areas. So that would be an example, and using that example and just tying it to Tesla. Tesla started at the Roadster, a high cost car. And remember what he did? He sold the car that he could not deliver until 2 years later, forecasting the trends of technology, and delivered it 2 years later. But he charged people 2 year deposit early. So it was proof to a whole bunch of investors that there was a bunch of demand. That if he tried to deliver it right then, he couldn't, because the technology didn't enable him to. So he forecasted the trend, delivered it 2 years later, and he used the same model. And then as the technology came down, he scaled that into the model, the other models of cars, to be able to open up a bigger audience. So when people see monopoly power, they think that company always started with a broad-based offering, but it very rarely starts there. So Google too, they look at Google, what Google is today, and they forget what Google looked like. Google went after a market that was free. Everybody else charged for advertising, and Google gave free search. And as everybody built to it and everybody used it, now they could monetize it a whole bunch of different ways and move from search to a whole bunch of different other industries. If they went and said to the world that we're going to do everything right away, Microsoft would have seen them earlier and stopped that. So typically what ends up happening is you want to be the biggest fish in the smallest pond, while having an idea of where you're really going.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So, if I think about South Africa, for example, we 4IR, and that is growing quite big at the moment. But in terms of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are doing good things, but to integrate technology into it is so costly. This leads into my next question in terms of having bigger businesses or government coming into play and assisting, with just supporting those entrepreneurs. But my thing that I want to understand is, for entrepreneurs in Africa to integrate technology, and I know you're saying start with technology, look at those forecast it and look at the trends, but the technology to develop for whatever product it might be is so vastly, it's out of the particular entrepreneur's budget, because obviously they're trying to survive within an environment that has lots of challenges. And our challenges range from hunger and unemployment, and so it also goes back to an earlier point, in terms of deflation. So when you have this abundance, and it drives deflation and it drives wages down. But in a country like ours and in Africa, where we actually need to survive on income, how does that come into play? Because it's difficult for entrepreneurs who are not tech savvy or don't have that idea. So we might still lag behind quite far in terms of having technology brought into our offerings.
So, and that is the problem. That monopoly game board I said, I talked about, it gets harder and harder and harder because of the economic policy of the world trying to drive inflation. And we should expect that to continue. And I hate to say that because it shouldn't continue, but but I've seen no evidence of governments trying to stop that. In fact, they're printing more money and making it worse. And so, but a different conversation. It is not that the technology is really hard or costly. It's that the knowledge is feels too far away for them to gain. The technology is in a lot of the cases, AI, a whole bunch of this, by going into web services and different technologies. If people understood what technology, go to GitHub and different technologies, the technology is virtually free. It's the knowledge of how do I access that technology and how do I write that code, or who do I hire that people think they need somebody else to be able to do it, which is really expensive, and it's not. It's changing so dramatically that it's almost free. My first company, it cost me, it was 2 years, just over 2 years, and over $5 million of investment, mine and a whole bunch of friends, family, and elsewhere, and almost lost the business in that first 2 years to be able to develop the first part of the technology that could enable the business. So for 2 years, we couldn't do anything. That same technology, that actually way better technology, and that was 18 years ago, way better technology, I could get could get for $50 a month right now.
That's quite interesting. Thank you. I think in Africa we do, just as you say, we need to access the knowledge, but I think as we need to educate other entrepreneurs, for the entrepreneurs that are in tech and understand tech, they actually need to educate other entrepreneurs and look at how to assist them in scaling and moving forward and integrating that technology. Thank you. You've given me a lot to think about. Very valuable.
Absolutely. I want to jump in there quickly before Nomclaire comes back on. So, Jeff, this is exactly why we've created this community to democratize entrepreneurship, because we believe to democratize entrepreneurship, we have to democratize and create the knowledge nuggets. So we have to democratize education as well. And, because what we found is that perception of it's a leap too far, it's too complicated, it's too difficult, is a big constraint in general. And the more we can create, this sharing of this kind of information and even more abstract and simplified aspects of the information that people can easily consume, the better we'll be off. Over to you, Nomclaire.